Hello, Namaskar, Vanakkam. Poorvi textbook of English for class 8, unit 2. The second chapter is called Somebody's Mother. It's a short emotional poem and it tells us to take care of the elderly because every elderly person is someone else's parent, and that creates a bond between someone of one generation and another person of another generation, right? So that's what this entire poem is about. It tells a story about an elderly woman who needs help in crossing the road on a cold winter day and how a kind boy helps her. So it's a very simple poem, but the messaging of this particular poem is so very important, right? So there are some activities which you have to do individually because, as I say, the answers can depend from person to person. Some of these words which you would associate with an elderly person, right? So you need to circle those words. So you could talk about worried, you could talk about trembling, you could talk about gray, you could talk about bent, you could talk about slow. These are all words which you would associate with an elderly person. Underline the words which you would associate with a school student. So you would have strong, firm, guide, helpful, merry, hastening. Hastening means to do something fast, right? So these are some of the words so that you get used to, because some of these words would be also part of the poem. The woman was old and ragged and gray. Now, these are the words which are there in the poem. Now, ragged here essentially talks about something which is old and torn or in a slightly shabby kind of manner. This particular meaning. Okay. So, but ragged can also be used in different senses, just like the case in another story which we would see in Unit 3. A ragged coastline means something which is rough, something which is not uniform. Okay, ragged breathing means it is something which is not showing control. It is slightly irregular, and that is a cause for concern. If your breathing is not smooth, it means there is some kind of a medical problem, right? And this is, of course, an informal use where you're talking about someone being very exhausted and tired. So let's go through the story. So you can see this illustration. There is this elderly lady and there is snow, it's very obvious, on the floor, on the grass, etc. And there are these three school boys. Okay. The woman was old and ragged and gray. Gray referring to her gray hair, right? So the fact that it is showing age, and bent with the chill of the winter's day. So what does the first couplet, the first two lines indicate? The first two lines, ragged, as I said, it means shabby, old, and torn kind of a feeling. Bent means to kind of stooped over, right? So somebody is not erect, the spine is a little bent. So that is what is called bent, stooping over. So this couplet essentially establishes the scene and the main character of this poem, which is this elderly woman. It describes the elderly woman's physical state. She's old, emphasizing both her poverty because her clothes are shabby, ragged, right? It also tells us about her age, that she was old and she was gray, in the sense that, gray hair, and there was a sense of age, her having aged over a period of time. So the cold weather and bent with the chill of the winter's day. So she's feeling uncomfortable because of the extreme cold, right? So it is adding to her discomfort and makes her appear even more fragile. Fragile means someone who is extremely uncomfortable. Fragile also is used to say as if something will break. For example, if you are going on a plane and you need to you are carrying some material, maybe of glass, which can break. So when you put it, you ask the aircraft people to say fragile, handle with care, because so that when they see the fragile notice, they will say, okay, we should not just throw it away like this, as most aircraft handling happens. So, but they will put it more carefully because it contains some fragile items. So she is now, as a result of the winter, the harsh winter, she's appearing very vulnerable. Okay. The street was wet with a recent snow and the woman's feet were aged and slow. So you see the rhyming which is happening: gray, day, snow, slow. Okay. The street was wet because of the snow. The street was wet because the snow, after it will melt, it will leave water on the road, right? After a recent snow, which means it had snowed very recently, just a while ago. And the woman's feet were aged and slow. They were old because she's an old woman. So obviously her feet also are moving very slowly. So this is continuing the description of the first couplet, the first two lines. And when you read the word, the street was wet, it also conveys that the street is dangerous to walk on, especially for an elderly person, because she could slip and fall because there is water now on the road, on the streets. So that makes it dangerous for her to walk on. She faces a risk if she crosses the street like this because the street is wet. The description of her feet as aged and slow, it again repeats and emphasizes her physical weakness. Already we know that her, her body was a little bent. This is again emphasizing the physical weakness and her inability to kind of move around despite the conditions around her. The conditions are not very good at this point in time because the road is wet, the snow is falling, and she's old. So the conditions are not very good, and that kind of re-emphasizes it that it will be difficult for her. She stood at the crossing and waited long, alone, uncared for, amid the throng. So what does the third couplet say? Throng refers to a large crowded group of people, right? Okay, so there were a whole lot of people, and amidst those people, she waited at the crossing to cross the road, and she waited for a long time. She was not waiting for a short time. She was waiting for a long time, and she was alone and uncared for, which means that despite the throng of people, despite the crowd of people, no one cared enough for her to help her that, okay, let me help this elderly person cross the road and move to the other side. So this couplet emphasizes her emotional state. She's alone and uncared for. It highlights her emotional state. It also tells us about the mindset of the people around her, that they don't care. She's struggling to cross the road, standing alone, uncared for. We don't care as well, right? So it is a comment on the people as well, apart from the woman. The first two couplets told us about the woman. The third couplet tells us about the person, and indirectly also tells us about the mindset and the nature of people, that they are unhelpful. Please keep writing all the notes because I explain in great detail, which will be very useful for you when you write these answers. And I'll continue doing that for your 9th and 10th class, 11th and 12th also. Okay, take that from me. So the words alone, uncared for shows her isolation in the middle of a bustling crowd, right? That she's alone. There are a lot of people, but she's alone. You understand the point? I may suppose it's like, you go to a party where there are 100 people, but you don't know anyone. So you stand in one corner, right? Not knowing who to talk to. You don't know anyone. So you are alone. The rest of the people don't care about your presence there. So you're uncared for. It is a similar kind of a situation for this elderly woman, that despite being surrounded by people, no one pays attention to her. And that kind of again underlines her sense of helplessness, because she needs help to cross the road, but nobody is coming forward to help her. Fine? Understood till here? Great. Of human beings who passed her by, nor heeded the glance of her anxious eyes. Her anxious eyes conveys a sense of helplessness, right? Heeded out here. Heeded the glance. Heeded means to pay attention or to take notice of something, right? Anxious means worried or feeling nervous, right? So this particular couplet, these two lines further highlight the indifference of the crowd, that they don't care, right? The people pass by, they ignore that there is in her eyes a certain longing for help. She's not saying it, but she is looking at people, please help me cross the road. She's saying it with her eyes. She's communicating it with her eyes, not with her tongue, not with her mouth, but she's communicating with her eyes, but no one is really caring enough to look at her eyes and seeing that, oh, this lady needs help. Let me help her cross the road. So it shows the lack of empathy. Lack of empathy. Please use this word, lack of empathy, EMPATHY, on part of the general public. Down the street with laughter and shout, glad in the freedom of school let out. And then something happens, right? Now there is a sudden shift. There is a lot of crowd, and now there is another addition to the crowd, because just there down the street, means in the neighborhood, suddenly you hear that the school timings are over it is over for the school and all the school children have been let out. So this kind of creates a contrasting element, a group of very energetic schoolboys, and they're laughing. How do you know the energy? Because they are laughing and they are shouting. Laughter and shout, because they are happy that they are now free because the school has let them out, right? So there is a lot of joy, there's a lot of excitement, which I'm sure all of you will relate to when it is 2 o'clock, 2:30, 3 o'clock, whatever time your school ends for the day. So that is, now you see they're laughing, they're shouting, there is a lot of joy. And this is in sharp contrast to the anxiety in the eyes of the old woman. You understand the contrast? Please note this down, because you can get this as a question, that contrast the school children with the old lady. So you need to highlight this. There is joy, there's laughter, there is shouting out there, there is, a lot of sound here, but here there is only silent anxiety in the eyes of the elderly woman. Came the boys like a flock of sheep, hailing the snow piled white and deep. So then came a lot of boys. Hailing means, to greet, to cheer, hey, that kind of a sound, which again, I'm sure all of you would be doing. Of course, you wouldn't be probably having snow in most parts of India, right? So there is now here used a simile. Simile is when you use the word like or you use the word as. So here you see the word like has been used. So this is a literary device, a poetic device called simile. So came the boys like a flock of sheep. So the boys have been compared to a flock of sheep, which means all of them come together the way, goats and sheep are sent together by the person, the shepherd, right? So the boys are moving together in a large group, rather unthinking group, because the sheep also, they just keep going through. It's a herd mentality. The first sheep goes, so all of them keep going in the same direction. They say they don't really use their mind. The boys here also is vibrant. They're like unthinking, because they don't care. Oh, there is this person. They're not even thinking about all, because they're focused on the snow that is there on the road, right? On the street. So they are kind of hailing the snow, means they want to kind of enjoy the snow, and they completely are oblivious, means they are not aware of the anxiety in the eyes of the elderly person, that she needs help to cross the street. Past the woman so old and grey, hasten the children on their way. So all the children passed them. Hasten means to move quickly. Okay, to move quickly, and they walked past the woman. So the children hurry past without stopping by to see whether she needs any help. And this kind of is very similar to the previous couplet about the adults. Earlier it was adults. The throng of people is referring to the adults. But these children also behave very similar to the adults. And the woman's plight, the woman's condition is completely ignored by each one of them. Nor offered a helping hand to her, so meek, so timid, afraid to stir, right? Timid means lacking in courage, lacking in confidence, right? And meek here again means someone who is very gentle, and someone who can be easily intimidated, someone who can be easily get very scared, right? So nobody offered her a helping hand, right? And it also describes the woman's state of fear. She's scared to kind of cross the road because she knows that she would be vulnerable if she crosses the road without anyone helping her, because the road is very slippery. Also because of the traffic, and that comes in the next sentence, lest the carriage wheels or the horse's feet should crowd her down in the slippery street. So there are these two dangers. One, the road is slippery, that you can see out here, plus there is also traffic of the horses and the different carriage wheels, that they can cause an accident and make her fall down, which is why she is extremely worried and anxious. Lest means to prevent something bad from happening, that please take care of the house lest a thief get in, right? So please close the door lest someone, a stranger or an intruder, get in. So lest means to prevent something bad from happening. That's where you use the word lest. So lest the carriage wheels or the horse's feet. So basically she's afraid of being run over by carriages or horses, and it kind of underscores, it kind of emphasizes that she is in a slightly risky, vulnerable kind of position. Oof. I speak with a lot of energy, so I just get very exhausted. At last came one of the merry troop, the gayest laddie of all the group. Now, the merry means someone who is very cheerful, right? Troop means a group of people, right? Gayest laddie means laddie is a word which is used in Scotland for a boy or a young man. Okay, so this word is used specifically in Scotland, which is part of Europe above England, right? Gayest means someone who is very cheerful or lively. Okay, the gayest boy in the entire group. Okay, so one of them came about. He paused beside her, and when he sees him, he's full of life. He's very gay, means he's full of life, lot of joy, but he's the one who notices her. Okay, so like others, he's also full of joy and laughter, but he notices her, right? And he says, he paused beside her and whispered low, I'll help you cross if you wish to go. So he says that, his actions are very gentle, right? And he paused, means he stopped, and he spoke in a very soft kind of tone, which shows respect, it shows empathy, it shows sensitivity, in sharp contrast to the ignoring nature of the adults and the rather loud nature of the other students, right? He offers help, says that, I will do this for you. Okay. Her aged hand on his strong young arm she placed, and so without hurt or harm. The 12th couplet, she says that there was a physical contact, that she holds him, that her arm, her hand is old, so there will be a lot of wrinkles, etc. But his arm is very strong because there is youth, he is young, so it is strong, so she holds him, she plays, and so without hurt or harm, right? So the old woman's aged hand comes in contact with his strong young arm, and without hurt or harm emphasizes that he is providing her with safety and care. Okay. He guided the trembling feet along. So her feet are trembling because of old age, also because of a certain sense of nervousness, proud that his own were firm and strong. So while her feet are trembling, shaking, quivering, it can also be because of the cold. Yes, of course. So because of old age and because of cold, and he was feeling proud, in the sense that, firm means that they are firm and strong. They are not kind of shaking. So he's kind of highlighting, it highlights, proud is not used in a negative sense. It is used in a positive sense because it's highlighting his confidence and physical ability, that he's strong because of his young age, and also because of the satisfaction that he's able to help this elderly lady. Then back again to his friends he went, his young heart happy and well content. It's always said, if you help somebody, not only will that person feel happy, but it will also, that act of having helped somebody will also make you happy, which is why it's so very important in life to be helpful to other people, because it will, it's like, attracting good karma, that you do these good acts, someone else will do a good act to you also when you are in trouble. It will always happen. It's not like, I will never get into trouble. Everyone will face some problems or the other at some stage in life, right? So if you do this, it's like, I did a good turn. It's like, extra points in my account, which will come in handy. It's a bit like that, right? So then back again to his friends, and he went back to his friends. He returns to his friends, and the reward that he has got is an internal feeling of happiness and contentment, because he did a good deed by helping the lady cross the street. She's somebody's mother, boys, for all she's aged and poor and slow. And then he says that, and this is the central moral of the poem, and this is where the title comes from, right? That she's somebody's mother, right? We may think that we should help our mother, but if we care for someone else's mother, someone else may care for your mother as well, right? So the central moral of the poem, the boy explains the reason for his helping to his friends, because he did not see her as an old woman. He did not see her as an elderly person. He saw her as a human being who also has a family of her own. And more importantly, she's somebody's mother, some other son's mother or some other daughter's mother. And therefore, it shows the young boy's empathy. It shows his ability to see beyond appearances. He didn't see an elderly person standing there. He saw a human being who also had relationships. So by helping her, he had also kind of formed some kind of an unspoken relationship with that elderly lady. And I hope some fellow will lend a hand to help my mother. You understand? So he says, lend a hand is an idiom meaning to help somebody. Lend a hand means to help somebody. So the boy's empathy, and this is again the central moral of the poem, which is so beautiful. It says, he says, I love my mother, and I hope that when my mother needs help, there will be some other person who will help. Lend a hand means who will help that my mother. Uh, and I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. So he also helped her because it was like he saw his own mother there, and he also thought that if tomorrow my mother needs help and I'm not around, there will be some other person who will actually go ahead and help my mother cross the street or in whatever way she wants help. If ever she's poor and old and gray, when her own dear boy is far away. And this again continues his thought. And he kind of, this is kind of talking about the universal emotion of wanting to help, of kindness, saying that one day his own mother may need help when she is old, when she is gray, when she is poor, right? And at that time, when her own dear son, that is me, I am probably not going to be around to help her. And somebody's mother bowed low her head in her home that night, and the prayer she said. So these are the three couplets which the boy is telling his friends, explaining his rationale, explaining his reason why he went ahead and helped the elderly lady. That night, this elderly lady, the perspective shifts to the old lady, okay, who is somebody's mother, which is why it has been put in double quotes. Bowed low her head, in the sense that it is almost in sense of gratitude, probably in the sense of prayer as well. At her home that night, and she said a prayer, right? She bowed low her head. When you are praying, you obviously lower your head in gratitude before God. Was God be kind to the noble boy who is somebody's son and pride and joy? And she says that noble means someone who is having very fine personal qualities like empathy and kindness. And she says a prayer for that particular boy who she calls a noble boy and also somebody's son. So she also recognizes what the boy had said. So she says that he's a noble person, and it is a parallel to the boy's earlier thought. So she sees him as somebody's son and a source of pride and joy. That what a fantastically brought up child who is willing to help somebody's mother who he does not know at all. So this particular conclusion brings to us the theme of kindness, the theme of empathy, and the theme of respect for even a stranger, because every stranger is somebody's father, every stranger is somebody's mother. Please remember that the next time one of you, all 14-year-old children, 13-year-old children, write some rude comment on YouTube or say something rude to anyone who is elder to you, please remember that would you like someone else to say something similar to your father, to your mother, to your elder brother or elder sister? Please think about that before you type something which is seen to be extremely rude kind of a comment. Okay, on that thought, I will end this particular poem. I hope you liked and understood this poem by Mary Dow Brine, an extremely important point in the context of the kind of world we live in, where kindness seems to be in short supply. So be kind to everyone. As I say, you put that kind act into the universe, it will come back to you. Trust me, I've seen the world, it will come back to you. Tata, bye bye. Thank you very much. The Hindi explanation will be done in a separate video.